civil rights movement in India. Manisha Gupte, please join us. Just wanted to add that as per the agenda we were supposed to start the keynote with Islam from Palestine, but due to border politics, due to the issues going on in the world right now, we couldn't get visa. But we have tried to get a video recording, a clip from the organization, and we will be sharing that at the end of the day today. So that will be the closing keynote. Thank you. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. As we say in India, Zindabad, long live the revolution. Yeah. And how much time do I have?
20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay. So just kind of give me a heads up around 5 minutes and then again at 2 minutes so that I can start winding down. I'm very happy to be here. Talking to all of you, and my keynote was supposed to be in the evening, but of course, it all depends. You just change one thing on the chessboard and you start playing the game in the way that you made the move. So rather than conclude about feminist alliance building, I'm going to start off with that. So maybe that will help us during the day to keep some things in mind. I'm sure they're all in everybody's minds, but it always never harms to reiterate them in the beginning. So I'm going to start with the depressing stuff first. So much has happened over the past 1 year, especially during the past 2 months when Trump has come in and how the global north politics accepts him. Now this is for the 100th time. I am so happy that my organization has never taken any money from the US state because of its imperialist policies, either the US state or their subsidiaries or anyone, the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund, for the havoc they play. But I know that a lot of people in this room are going to be directly or indirectly affected by that, the gag, which was always there, but now it's like completely suffocating gag. And my heart goes out to everybody, and all of us have to get together sometimes to see which are the funders that will take us on our terms. And I'm sure there are. And this is the era of consortia. And without having the global north and south power that also exists within feminist movements or especially in research, how we can try to build certain horizontal alliances. So I think this is one very important way of how an alliance can happen at the level of funding and just surviving through the days of fascism and the right wing that is growing all over the world. So we know about the global distress, we know about the war, we know it's happening in Europe, we know it's happening in the Middle East. So many countries, how do you do anything when you are afraid of your children not coming back from school, or your neighborhood not being there when you come back, or coming out of prison and finding that your families, for the only reason you survived torture, were actually killed while you were in prison. So I cannot even say imagine, because there is just, it would be too disrespectful to those who are going through to say, I can imagine what you're going through. It is beyond imagination what is happening. And even when I say beyond imagination, I'm getting goosebumps, and I have the luxury to get goosebumps and not not be tortured to death. Yeah? So now we find militia. I just read militia, going into one of the African countries, going into prison, raping women there, and then setting the whole prison on fire with the women inside. I mean, this is what is happening to people, not only the state, but state-sponsored militia, that they are doing that. Now, all these women who are, displaced internally, externally, don't they menstruate? Don't they get pregnant? Don't they need abortions? Don't they need contraception? And how these become completely on the backmost burner, because at that point it's just escaping, it's just doing. But I'm menstruating, but I'm getting pregnant, but I don't want this pregnancy, or I want a safe childbirth. What happens to all those people who now are migrating, one will say illegally, I'm not saying unjustly, I'm saying illegally, into places that they think has a different dream, maybe the United States or any other so-called white country that has more resources. What happens when I give birth to the child of a rapist in a country? And be charged with saying, I'm doing that to get citizenship through my child. Yeah? So just imagine what millions of women are going through as we are talking here. The morbidity, long-term morbidity, mortality, you don't even survive to tell your story. The psychosocial issues. Now, in this environment, how do we talk about desires? How do we talk about sexual attraction? How do we talk about sexual autonomy? So just look how something happens, and conversations that we have nurtured over the past 4 or 5 decades just suddenly get lost because they are no longer so important. Now, reduced fund for reproductive health, we know right even in the beginning that if you took a fraction of the money from the USAID, you could not do abortion with the rest of your own money. Imagine the bullying, right? Just imagine the bullying. And now, cutting all UN, all kinds of human rights, instruments, just cutting funding for those. So now if reproductive health doesn't get enough funding, what's going to happen to sexual health? What's going to happen to reproductive rights? What's going to happen to sexual rights? Yeah? So all the gains that we have, and let's not forget that all these people have been voted into power with a majority. We don't know how they got that majority. Now lots of questions related to how they got that majority. But there is something in the air. Yeah. Like Oscar Wilde says about Reading Jail, that the only thing that, grows in prison air, only wild deeds, grow in what is called, poisonous air. And so therefore we know that the wildest deeds, things that people thought are now being spoken, things that were spoken are now being done, and things that are done now have impunity. Yeah? They always had impunity, but now, because they're state-sponsored, there is complete impunity for what you do. So what happens to so many hard-earned battles, reproductive needs and rights of LGBT plus communities? What happens, right? Everybody needs reproductive health and rights, irrespective of your gender, irrespective of your sexuality. In fact, much more, because so many of them have been completely bypassed over the years. We know that from India we've had 3 planes come back, people shackled, people handcuffed, and 48, 60, 70-hour journeys in military planes. And we now know, there was a film made in India, but now we know about the donkey route, the Damian Gap, that 93-kilometer, coming through the forests from Panama, Colombia, etc. Women having to leave children behind. Can you imagine? I mean, I'm not putting extra emotion in my voice because it's women and children. I'm just saying, just the thought that you have to leave somebody behind because, you are being raped, you are being chased by people who are extorting you, and to not know, I mean, how do I even live after that? Any parent or any child leaving your partner, leaving senior citizens, or being left behind, to be eaten by, if you're lucky, to be eaten by, animals, and otherwise, to be taken and to be raped. And they're giving women condoms before we're starting on the Damien Gap. I mean, knowing what's going to happen to you. So this is something, that I've read, and I've lost sleep over even just reading. Now, it's the US trade wars that keeps other nations quiet. We know that, right? It's the consumerism that's keeping nations quiet. No nation would keep quiet. Many nations are very conscious about their sovereignty. And I'm glad that my country has been, very conscious of its sovereignty, sometimes for good, bad, ugly reasons. But there's nothing one can do because of what is happening with the trade wars. Now, families are in further debt because of they've sold land to send one person abroad, and they come back and it's much more debt. Now, how is this debt being repaid? This debt is being repaid by women's unpaid labor. It's by the poorest striving to make whatever they've lost over generations. Because when you're sending somebody abroad, we're not talking in 1,000 rupees, we're talking in hundreds of thousands of rupees, right? And how are they going to do that? My own organization, we started savings and credits even before microcredit became a big name. It was probably one of the first or second in India to start that. Now, why did we start that? We found that one of the major reasons of debt was health expenditure. Because 85% or 90% of health expenditure in India is still out of pocket. And I never tire of saying this, that when my country was poor, healthcare was almost free. When my country was poor, my education, right from my school to my PhD, was almost free. I mean, by today's standards, I know it's not right, it's not even $200 that I paid for 22 years of education until my PhD viva. Can you imagine that? And I got back 2/3 of it because I still was under the shadow of the first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, who wanted scientists. And before my PhD in sociology, my MSc is in microbiology. And because I was doing research, I was getting 250 rupees a month, and my yearly fees for the university were 100 rupees. Yeah? I mean, so if my poor country could pay for everybody's education, if my poor country could pay, I remember JJ Hospital, there are friends there from JJ Hospital. Most of our surgeries took place in JJ Hospital, KEM Hospital, all government hospitals, and they were good. So if my poor country could pay for all of this, I can't understand why my rich country now cannot pay. Now we are so rich that bilateral aid is now being stopped. We are asking people to leave the country, saying we don't need your money anymore because you are strengthening the voices of NGOs who are, anti-national. I say anti-nationalism is in my DNA. I don't blame me for that because my grandfather was part of the freedom movement against the British, and my parents were in the freedom movement. So, whoever is so-called the nation, which doesn't have much to do with women, because nation is a patriarchal construct in the way that we understand it. So, this is what you are. The more you talk of peace, the more you talk of the whole country, you are anti-national. The more you talk of 4 houses around your house, you are national. So the more, the more constricted your view, the more you are considered patriotic or national. So now we know that finance companies, I don't know about other countries, but there's horror stories about what finance companies are doing to women when they are unable to repay loans. We know that healthcare, education are, causing debt. I know I was in Johns Hopkins for a year as a visiting fellow, and students who were doing post-graduation, graduate degrees in public health had to work in pharma to repay their loan to Johns Hopkins, which even in the 90s was like, $200,000 sometimes. Can you imagine doing public health and then working in pharma to repay your student loan? We know increasing poverty, wage gap, privatization, hostility towards all kinds of affirmative groups now. All inclusivity jobs have been lost in the US. Now the moment those jobs are lost, what happens to the people whose rights have to be part of that inclusivity? Can you imagine what's going to happen? Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have been just laid off in a day. And this rhetoric of not understanding historical discrimination but asking for affirmative action on the basis of caste or ethnicity, and these are castes that are privileged castes, is now happening in my country. That's what's happening. And why? And if with privatization anyway, where is affirmative action? Yeah. So how privatization leads to people who have been coming in through affirmative action being thrown out, and these are like silent throwing out. I'm just giving you this because these might resonate with some things that are happening in your country. How much time do we have?
6 minutes.
6 minutes, okay. So I'm skipping some of the things that I want to say because I have like two more important things to say. We're suddenly finding that marriage as a panacea for all ills that has always existed is now gaining further credence. You're on social media, it's the jungle that we haven't taught our young girls to navigate because now it comes inside the house. The simplest thing is to take away any access and then get her married. We know that's not the answer. In my community, girls are running away much faster because they know that the parents are going to get them married, and the parents know the girl is going to elope, so they get her married even, So at one point there's education, but parents really who have never been to school don't know how to deal with children who are more educated than they are, who are asking for mobility to go to the nearby town, and who are much more smart on social media, which parents don't know. And therefore this fear just kind of comes out as as panic, moral panic, and you take away what happens. Now, this is what's happening at the level of the family. Now what's happening at the level of the state? The uterus being manipulated. China suddenly jumps from 1 child to 3 children. Yeah. I mean, when you have 1 child, when you're born, you have the burden of 6 adults on you. Your parents, your mother's parents, and your father's parents. If you get married, you inherit 6 more adults that you have to take care of. So 12 adults that you get as a bridal shower, right? Now, a lot of people don't want to marry, and I can understand why. Girls don't want to marry, boys want to, so it's very clear who benefits from marriage. I mean, it's very clear that what is happening around the world. But now that people don't want to marry, a lot of young people in China don't want to marry, and now suddenly you're talking of from 1 to 3. Every religion is under danger. Yeah? So, Majhab Khatre mein hai, whatever, all religions. Yeah? And now the only way to keep your religion out of danger is for your women to produce more children, for cannon fodder, to die in riots, to be out there, to kill. And the most subordinated, we know, are the ones who go behind bars, the ones that, actually bring the cocaine into the country, are in villas that have, security that you can never breach. It's the ones that are selling crack on the street that are out there. So what are we going to do with these more children? I'm completely in favor of as many children as one wants. I'm just sick and tired of the state telling us and manipulating populations through what comes out of our uterus. Now when women have to go to work, they cannot leave their daughters behind. They themselves don't have menstrual leave. I know it's a lot of controversies. My generation kept talking of menstruation not being an illness, but now the younger generation is talking of dysmenorrhea, and we have to reach some conclusion about what we are going to do about leave like that. But because I cannot work, or I'm not given leave, I cannot leave my daughter behind, many times I get a hysterectomy done. It's not my choice. In the mid-20s, and I did a research study myself in 1987, where we showed that almost every woman who had undergone sterilization, and the sterilization was often casual, coerced through the family planning program, had a hysterectomy 5 or 7 years later, in the late 20s, early 30s. So what happens, with hysterectomies? And just as a futuristic scenario, what's going to happen when we have a robot that's going to bear children, or is going to provide sex? These are futuristic scenarios, and I think we need to engage with a lot of these creatively, and engage with these not in an essentialist way or in a scared way, but these are going to be, because the moment you challenge patriarchy, they will come up with something else. Now I want to say just 2 things now. One is that where do we learn totalitarianism? Where do we learn othering? Where do we learn where somebody is not like us? In our families, right? So, can we think of the patriarchal family as the smallest unit of fascism, where there's one person telling you what to do, nobody else is challenging that. We do not interact with them. We are not like them. Yeah? This is our caste, this is our subcaste. Yeah? We are superior to them. Now when you raise like that, and you raise in an education system where you are taught never to question, at least in India, my partner and I, we always say that we're surprised how people stay intelligent and questioning in spite of the education system. Yeah. So therefore, but everybody must have access to education. I'm not talking, of lack of access to education. So if we are raised like that, and we are raised in a family that teaches us, to hate, that teaches us to others, how are we not going to follow totalitarianism outside the house? How are we not going to follow cultural nationalism? How are we not going to follow religious nationalism, aka also known as fascism, right? So these are the questions that we have to ask. When we raise boys at home in gender and patriarchy, of course they gain much more. I'm tired of listening to how men suffer equally in terms of gender or suffer equally in terms of patriarchy. Yeah, that's not true. Yeah, they are taught to assimilate resources. Women are taught to give up resources. So the gendering happens. It's cruel when you're doing that to a 4-year-old child, but you're preparing. It's a military boot camp where you're getting the son to say that you have to rule the world and therefore you better be tough. So within patriarchy, I have no doubt that men, cis men, gain the most. But who gains outside the house? It's the violent boys that we create inside that are then used as cannon fodder for the riots, for the military, for the rapes, and for the killings that happen outside. And when these men come inside, they are violent to their own women, as they have always been, and they're also violent to women outside the house. So raising violent men actually is a boon for all the other related systems of oppression that men have to understand that they might gain inside the house, but they're not gaining anything outside the house. So now my last point. Do we have any option but to build stronger feminist alliances? It's an issue of survival. It's not even an issue of maybe, maybe not. It's just no way that we can say we will not. And the first thing is to challenge the public and the private domains, because there is nothing like the public and the private domain. Yeah, what my workplace as a health worker is a public domain, which is your private domain. So we really know, or I go out to fill water for the family, it's the public domain, but I'm doing work for the private domain. So really this is complete nonsense. Of course, dismantling patriarchy and related systems of oppression, both inside and outside the house. At the personal level, I would say that we reduce wants. All wars, zar, zameen, zanana, gold, land, and women, all wars are fought for these three. For control over our uteri, for land, and for resources. And most of the wars in the Middle East are because of oil and because of so. Can we reduce wants as much? Because they are the triggers for wars. Ditto about population policies that are based upon utilization, ownership, and consumption of resources. So resources really within the house patriarchy, which hands resources down to this unbroken chain of boys, that is one thing. And can we refuse entitlements and privileges that come to us because we are located in the global north, because of a certain caste, because of a certain ethnicity, because of a certain gender, because of a certain sexuality? Are we going to give up those entitlements and act with love, compassion, empathy towards resistance and revolution? Stand for the truth. Just being woke or just being politically correct isn't going to get us anywhere. We have to ask our conscience what the truth is, because only the truth that is non-violent will lead us all out of the mess today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manisha, for taking us through today's fractured world from globalization, bringing it down to the public and personal, down to the units of the family and to where we see life today. This, I think, sets the scene for today's agenda. We're going to speak about decolonization, decriminalization, and seeing also big picture politics on how our personal lives fit in. So moving on to the next session. Okay. I'd like us to reflect on what Manisha said. As we go on speaking about decriminalization and decolonization for the next session, I would like to invite Anima Anjuri from the Center of Health Equity India. She's going to speak a little bit about judicial barriers to safe abortion access in India and analysis of reproductive justice and rights in Indian courts.
I'll just put mine down.
So for those who don't know that we have had quite a good journey coming into thinking about sexual and reproductive health along the lines of power and patriarchy. And we've actually come for about 10 years in a lot of our academic work. We put it into a very compact and easily accessible form that's available across the globe. You've all heard about it. It's the first ASAP Academy. So Manisha is one of the key speakers, and Manisha with Dr. Suchitra and a lot of other, we have key speakers taking us through different small nuggets of modules that you will be able to do with the ASAP module. So I would encourage you to go online to the ASAP website. You can get the links for the ASAP Academy. And if you all feel that your journey through the YAIs has been very, very valuable to you in your growth, I would highly recommend that you recommend it to your friends and your colleagues as well, because we want to build movement. And if you're really interested in globalization, I learned a lot from Manisha in her politics on how we can root gender and identity and ideology actually in our conversations for sexual and reproductive health. I would really encourage you to go to our website and see the academy. Yeah. We do have scholarships for those from lower and middle income countries, and if you are not sure, even if you are from some high income country and and you're part of an intersectional community, please do reach out to us. Because as much as we can, we try to divert funds or look for funds as well. But we also use the academy as a method of fundraising, because this is a pushback for us, because we want to reclaim our space, and we know there is some funding, so you can actually look at how you can see we can mobilize more people into the academy. Please reach out to us. Okay.
Hi, good morning everybody. I was really dreading coming after Manisha because she's almost like a stalwart and I don't know what to say after it. But I think she very nicely covered a lot of barriers, systemic, institutional, that still exist. Sorry about that. Generally exist, and especially when it comes to like women's sexual and reproductive rights. And because we have specifically worked on abortion, I will highlight judicial barriers as something which really impedes women's access to abortion in India. So I work at C-Help. We are a team of lawyers. We try our best to cover, look at law and policy angle in terms of health, sexual, reproductive rights, all of these things. And from that point of view, we thought we'll investigate judicial barriers to abortion. The methodology we have generally followed here is that we went through 470 cases as of now, and we tried to find out what are the reasons because of which the abortion is denied, and what are the reasons why women come to court to seek abortion. So generally, as you can see, in India, abortion is not a right. It is, there's a statute that exists called MTP Act, which allows abortion conditionally. Now, initially, before amendment, the timeline that was followed was that up to 12 weeks, if one medical practitioner was advising abortion, it could be sought. Similar now, post amendment, that has gone up to 20 weeks, and right now, between 24 is the legal threshold till the time period that you can avail abortion, but all of that is very conditional. So it's mostly after 24 weeks that women really are pressed to come to the courts, invoke their constitutional rights to seek abortion, and majorly the reasons why women come to the court is just like a lot of other people talked about their statutes and the position in their countries. It's mostly in the cases of rape, failure of contraception, injury to mental health, physical health, or generally threat to life, and all these others that I've highlighted here. Our investigation of these cases, which is still ongoing, and what we covered, generally we did a research from 2019 till 24. We tried to cover few years before the amendment and then few years after the amendment. And what our study highlighted was that this is a order in which the cases come to the court. So majority of the cases come for fetal abnormality. Now, fetal abnormality, generally with the technologies in India, you are able to find them out starting 20 weeks, majorly around 24 weeks. So it's pretty late and very close to the threshold when women find out they have fetal abnormality, and that is when they move to the courts. So our finding generally showed us that in a lot of cases, the blue shows the percentage of the cases in which NTP was allowed, abortion was allowed. Red is the denial rate. So in terms of fetal abnormality, courts majorly allow, sorry, I'll just move on. Yeah, majorly allowed abortion. But then the problem with this particular thing we realized when we were going through the judgments was that it is very dependent on the finding of the medical courts. So medical paternalism really comes out when you start investigating and looking at the judgments. The autonomy of the woman, which should be based on just a finding of fetal abnormality, actually gets completely done away with in the process. Once you go, when the case goes to the court appoints a medical board to investigate presence or absence of fetal abnormality. Generally what happens, it's the medical board and the court that is finally deciding. It's not the woman, the autonomy completely gets taken over. That's the biggest problem with the fetal abnormality cases, the way they are adjudicated. Also, there's like no fixed definition of what is a fetal abnormality. So that allows a lot of discretion with the medical boards, and sometimes they only look at fertility as, you know, the main criteria. So if the chances of the fetus of survival are really grim, maybe they'll allow it. But if they think there's medically mitigable measures, chances are they would advise against abortion. They do not take the lived experiences, the social determinants, the financial determinants aspects into account, which is really problematic. Next, I think it's pretty much, we can just make out that rape, when the survivors are minors, courts generally take a very protectionist approach, and the number of cases in which it is allowed is, out of 184, it was 87%. Not bad, but the language of these cases is very problematic. They're very paternalistic. They talk about future pregnancies as if the only consideration about a woman's life, while allowing an abortion case is that she should be able to procreate in the future, which is very problematic. But what is like more problematic is that the kind of protectionism that they allow in cases of minors, they completely lose out in the cases of major women. So when the survivors are major women, generally they associate a weird contributory aspect to these major women in terms of adjudicating abortion on the basis of rape, as if they would have wanted to get raped, and that's really problematic. The numbers might reflect that, you know, very few cases came to the court under this particular ground. But from our reading, and if you look at the ratio, it is really problematic. and it's an ongoing exercise, so we might find more cases, and generally the reporting rate of these cases in India is also really problematic, especially in the major women, so that's another thing. When it is minor women, generally there's mandatory reporting, so that's where there's like such a huge difference in the number of reported cases, but the metric generally remains problematic. I will not cover all of them because there's another thing I want to talk about. But for now, I'll also talk shortly about the mental health aspect, because mental health again is a ground that is available in a lot of different legislations across the globe. But the way when women approach the court and they argue that we want abortion because we want to save our mental health, problem with the courts is that sometimes they view mental health as mental illness. So the exercise that they get into is generally to see if a mental illness is present or absent. The concept of mental well-being is really not there. And the way it is argued, and I'm also saying this against a lot of lawyers who argue these cases, is really problematic because you don't have to have a medical necessity to really seek abortion. It is a life-saving process, it is a medical procedure in itself, and just this aspect, this understanding seems to be very absent, especially when we were perusing the judgments. And when I'm saying judgments, I'm talking about the constitutional courts, which are generally the high courts and the Supreme Court in India, so that's another thing. Grave injury to women's life, Section 5 of the MTP Act, is a very holistic provision if you look at it, because you construe all the constitutional rights within life. So life also means life, like right to life, live with dignity. It also includes aspects of privacy, and it includes a lot of different constitutional dynamics that can be read into it. But I think the graph just suggests that even constitutional courts are not reading the rights within this particular section. And so the basic exercise what I'm trying to do here is to highlight the inconsistency within these constitutional works. And what happens with the inconsistent sort of jurisprudence is that it becomes a chance for women to seek abortion when they're in front of courts, depending on which bench they'll get and who they will appear before. Because seemingly the courts do not have a framework or a metric to allow or deny abortions. This fetal viability, again, lastly, I'll just very quickly close it. Fetal viability was never something that Indian statute talked about or worried about in the inception. At least it was not documented. There have been a lot of cases which have generally talked about the jurisprudence, but in our investigation and in the 6 years that we generally looked at, we can simply see that it is increasing. So we have tried to capture the percentage of case per year in which either it was discussed by the medical boards while giving their medical opinion, which is problematic, or it was talked about by the courts. And in a lot of these cases that are generally highlighted in the black, abortion was denied because of fetal viability. And fetal viability does not have a legal finding in the Indian statute, legal jurisprudence. So this is a completely extrajudicial exercise, and it's coming through the medical boards, and I think it really needs to be mapped and evidence needs to be created, and we really have to start looking at these things because it doesn't really find a place in Indian jurisprudence till now. Lastly, I'll just close with this. This is just, I'll not get into the cases. I'm just trying to highlight the inconsistent judgments. Per year, starting 2019, what we see, X versus State of Maharashtra and the ones in white are really progressive judgments. They talk about the framework that is there in the constitution, they talk about privacy, they talk about health and well-being, all of those aspects. In the same year, the courts are coming out with really regressive judgments, and in the worst possible cases. Just to give you an idea, S versus Rajasthan, the case in 2019 was a case in which the petitioner was a 17-year rape survivor, and she was 100% blind, but court denied abortion to her just because they used parents' patrie principle from the side of unborn. So they said that while you are alive, you need protection, which the state will provide you. There's nobody to represent the unborn. And the parents' patrie is essentially taking guardianship of somebody. So they took guardianship of the unborn. So now that's really problematic at multiple levels. Similarly, this is just the inconsistency. And these are the good judgments and the really bad ones at that. So like in the same year, this is the different sort of thing which is happening. So yeah, I'll end with it. I just say that the exercise we're doing is ongoing. We're really mapping other cases, and I think we already have around a list of 600 plus. This is all the cases in which women were forced to come to the court. India is not a litigating country, so these many women coming to the court in itself is just telling you how pressed they felt for it. And do check out when the report is out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anima. It's crazy to see how much the decision over women's choice over her own body is taken out into so many levels, like doctors, nurses, obviously problematic as well, and then extrajudicial levels, medical boards. It's crazy. And if anything, I think, yes, I've taken away from Anima, thank you, it's all problematic. Yeah, so, but you know, just important to see and document, and I think that's a really good job that you guys are doing. Next, we'll have lessons from Mongolia, young women's role in SRHR and abortion rights. And I would like the speaker to come up so we can introduce ourselves.
Okay. You don't want the presentation? You need it for the presentation.
So I was in Mongolia last year doing a workshop while they're setting up. And it was amazing actually how empowered women are in Mongolia, being a very tiny country against a very massive superpower next door. We have a representative in our steering committee from China, and he has very interesting views as well. Going to Ulaanbaatar, I didn't know much, and then I also realized how much in globalization we leave countries out because a lot of views are dominated by powers, really. And I look forward to hearing from Gansu.
Just wanted to add, you were figuring out the tech, but would like to introduce Gansul. So Gansul Purivsuran is a young feminist activist from Mongolia, advocating for SRHR, women's political participation and youth civic engagement. She's a senior anthropology student at the National University of Mongolia and a program assistant at Women for Change NGO. Since 2020, she has been involved in advocacy campaigns, workshops, and initiatives focused on gender equality and youth empowerment.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Okay, this is my first time ever speaking at the conferences like this. I'd like to first talk a little bit about our organization. And Women for Change is a feminist organization, non-governmental organization based in Ulaanbaatar and founded in 2010 by 4 Mongolian young women, and has extensively worked on gender equality and human rights and women empowerment, democracy. So, to understand an abortion landscape, we need to look at Mongolia's population data. And Mongolia has a population of 4.5 million people, and over the 51% is women, and almost 9,000 women are in the reproductive age group. So in 2023, there were over 12 100,000 recorded abortions, and majority women being aged 20 to 34. So these numbers reflect the reality that abortion is a common healthcare need. So if we're gonna look history of abortion access in Mongolia, before 1989, Mongolia transitioned from socialist system to democracy over the 35 years, and Mongolia followed the strict pro-natalist policy, and abortion was highly restricted, so the state controlled everything. And in 1989, Mongolia decriminalized abortion and shifting towards reproductive choice and access to safe abortion services. And during the 90s, like early transition years, abortion was at their highest because of the transition and also like economic instability and lack of contraception access and stuff. And today we have abortion is legal but regulated under specific conditions. So currently abortion is regulated under the 2019 legal framework, and while it is legal in Mongolia, access depends on where you seek services. So in public hospitals, abortions are only allowed for official decisions, and there are specific regulations for early and late-term abortions. And on the other hand, private clinics do provide services upon request, but at the cost. So this creates an access gap, and financial status, also a geographical situation, determines a woman's ability to seek an abortion. Everything might look perfect on the paper, but still, like, despite legislation, we still have many barriers still exist, and women face restrictions in accessing late-term abortions. Also, while minor needs a parental consent in order to have an abortion, also survivors of sexual violence must provide like supporting references from law enforcement authority. So this adds an extra emotional and bureaucratic burden. When it comes to an abortion, Mongolia faced three big challenges, which is stigma, misinformation, and lack of access. And women in general often face stigma and victim blaming culture. So many fear judgments from doctors, even family, in general, like society, and even medical professionals show like unprofessional attitudes toward the patients, and it is because of due to their lack of education. So the situation is even worse for LGBTQ plus individuals. As I'm preparing this presentation to like, I had talked with the LGBT community people, and they were shared their experiences with me. So we're in LGBT community discussions focus more on STIs and HIVs rather than safe abortion. And also in Mongolia, SRHR information comes from informal sources like family and friends, and it is fueling myths and misinformation, while reliable sources remain scarce and mostly negative. One of the biggest challenges also is Mongolia is like misinformation about abortion pills, and many believe myths like if you have an abortion once you may never get pregnant again, or like abortion causes a long-term health problems. And it is because due to lack of proper education, and many people fear them unnecessarily. And also the other thing is people often don't know where to go for safe abortion services, and some delay procedures because they can't afford them, because only private clinics give abortions on request. And also in rural areas, especially among Herdu women, limited healthcare facilities and geographical barriers makes it even hard. And next one. So in Mongolia, grassroots organizations like feminist organizations play a key role in SRHR advocacy. While the government provides a little education on SRHR, civil society organizations take on responsibility of informing and supporting people. Groups like Women for Change and also like the LGBT Center for Mongolia work tirelessly despite having limited resources. And vulnerable groups like LGBT individuals or like poor and rural women who struggle with access due to financial and geographical barriers, also sex workers and marginalized youth who are often overlooked in health policies. So without this organizations, misinformation and stigma would remain unchallenged. So this is the pictures of our organizations, SRHR and Safe Abortion Advocacy Works. As you can tell from the picture, that we do like a lot of advocacy works over the years. And for example, this picture is from an Vagina Monologue, which is a feminist theater project, and it is for combating against gender-based violence, and also My Short Skirt, like public protest against the street harassment in Mongolia. And in this picture, this is a picture from my program, which is a young feminist leadership program, and Women for Change do a lot of advocacy works over the years. And this one is for my last. So the need for better SR education and advocacy in Mongolia. Abortion remains illegal but difficult to access due to stigma and financial barriers and misinformation. So in Mongolia, there are severe lack of SRHR education in schools and in society in general. And no official body or professional is fully assigned to advocate for safe abortion. So because of this, it is crucial to raise awareness and about SRHR and abortion rights. I was fortunate enough to learn about safe abortion and reproductive rights through like a lot of projects that I do within the Women for Change community, but many remain uninformed and uneducated. So raising awareness and ensuring more people have access to accurate, reliable information is one of our goals. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Gansu. It's awesome to see how vibrant the young people's activism was in Mongolia, and a really good job that you all are doing.
Back. Please go back. No, that one. No, just go to the pen. Back. Yes.
Next we would like to invite Nilupuli Nayantara, who is a member and SRHR advocate at the Youth Advocacy Network Sri Lanka and a social worker. Her research interests focus on gender, trauma, climate change and feminism. Welcome, Nilu.
Good morning, everyone. So yes, my name is Nilupuli Nayanethara and I'm from Sri Lanka. I'm a member of Youth Advocacy Network Sri Lanka. We are a youth organization in Sri Lanka which mainly focus on SRHR, but especially on abortion rights in Sri Lanka. So my research topic is where did it go wrong? Exploring the historical discourse on legalizing safe abortion in Sri Lanka. In simple terms, actually, the politics behind legalizing safe abortion in Sri Lankan context. So, I would like to start the presentation with, before that, this was a research I did last year. I was reading all Parliament Hansards from 1990 to 2024 and watching like thousands of videos where politicians are talking about SRHR issues in the Parliament. It was interesting also, it made me so angry in some points as well. But moving to the pre-colonial era, I'm literally talking about before British colonized us. There was no law related to abortion in the country. It happened in the local context, and people use the Sri Lanka, back then we had like Ayurvedic medicine systems and they used that, and it happened, there was no law at all. And then British, they were colonized us 1796, correct me if I'm wrong. And after 100 years they were living in Sri Lanka, they wanted to give us these laws, a government system, and then they put this law to criminalize abortion in 1883, and according to that it's criminalized except to save mother's life. Let's say like I'm a girl with autism disorder, spectrum disorder, and I was raped and I got pregnant and I want to terminate the abortion pregnancy, but according to the law, I can't do that. I had to keep the fetus. So that's the law right now. So now we are in the after independence, after 1948. The law still remains. Nothing has changed. And Sri Lanka has 22 million population. From that, 5.3 million women are considered within their reproductive age group. Actually, we don't have like much research on abortion, but this research done by the Ministry of Health in 2016, according to them, 658 abortions occur daily in Sri Lanka, but they actually assume it can be 1,000. And also unsafe abortion accounts for up to 13% of maternal deaths, but this is not a big amount. Around 30 deaths happen in Sri Lanka related to the maternal deaths. Very recently, not recently, but 2023, I went to a research validation a discussion by organization which work with trade unions in Sri Lanka, like garment workers, especially women. And they have done this research, and according to them, they had like 194 women responded, and according to them, all respondents have experienced terminating a pregnancy. From them, 77.3% of the sample interview had gone through abortion once, 21.1% had undergone the procedure twice, and 1% had terminated pregnancy 3 times. According to them, where they have had those procedures, around 30% at a medical facility, less than 20 someone with a medical background, and less than 10% someone without a medical background, and more than 30 at a house or at their boarding houses, and less than 10% again at a hotel room. So those are the places where they have had their abortions. So moving to my favorite part, the patterns in parliamentary debates in Sri Lanka. So we have, the parliament 5 times, the parliamentarians, they have had this discussion related to abortion legalizing, and the reform story starts from 1995, and in that parliament debate, there were no videos, but there were Hansard's reports. But this one, there are some statements given by MPs, and you can read this one, like in 1995, MP, he says, liberalizing the law would result in increasing promising among women and false allegation of rape and weaken the institution of the family. So those were the things they were talking about in 1995. And in 2022 case, it was quite interesting. That time, the Minister of Justice was a Muslim person, and he wanted to legalize abortion. But legalizing abortion, which mean not legalizing, but changes some parts of the law. Let's example, like when there's abnormal fetal abnormalities, severe fetal abnormalities, incest, rape, and also when there's a pregnancy of a girl who is like under age 16. So they wanted to add those facts just to the law. That's all they wanted to do. And this is from a Christian religious leader in Sri Lanka. He's a very famous one. I'm not mentioning his name, but I would like to read out this statement as well. So once he said in a TV interview that I invite all of you to spread the message that abortion is murder to everyone you encounter. So this is the situation of the thoughts of religious leaders and also MPs in the country. And this woman was a female politician, and if I'm not wrong, she was the first Mrs. Sri Lanka from 1986. Her name is Rasi Senanayake. She was a former mayor to Colombo. And this interview happened in last year, November. I would like to play this little tiny clip for you.
How we can play this actually?
මම ක්‍රිස්තියානි කාන්තාවක්. මම ජීවිතේ ගත කරුත් නීති ගත කරන්නයි, ගබ්සා කිරීම නීති ගත කරන්නයි අත උස්සන්නෙත් නෑ. මම ඒකට ඒක ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරනවා. එතන නෙමෙයි මම ඉන්නේ. ගබ්සා අද සිදු වෙන්නේ අර අපි කරපු රිපෝට්ස් වල පෙන්වු කරනවා බහුතර ගබ්සා කිරීම සිදු වෙන්නේ විවාහ වෙච්ච කාන්තාව අතර. ඇයි විවාහක කාන්තාවක් අනවශ්‍ය ගැට් ගැනීමකට මුහුණ දෙන්නේ? ඉතින් මේවා කාන්තාවගේ නොදැනුවත් බව නිසා කාන්තාව දැනුවත් කළ කාන්තාවට අවශ්‍ය කරන පහසුකම් ලබා දීලා ඒ වගේම ගැනීම බලපුණා නිසා මේ ගබ්සාවල් වලට ලයිසන්ස් ලබා දෙන එක ඒකටත් මම රෙහි.
Even when I was watching this video, I was questioning myself whether she has any kind of idea what is terminating a pregnancy or what is an abortion. But she said like she's against to giving I don't know what does she mean by a license at least, but she said she doesn't want to give a license, but just giving the knowledge to women on contraceptive basically. That's what she was meant. So this smiling man is the current president of Sri Lanka. His name is Kumar Disanayake. So in 2019, when he was a presidential candidate, in a public meeting, he said that they need to change the law related to abortion. So that was the first time a parliament candidate talked about abortion in a public stage. So this is a light, like a fly light in a very dark world for us. And also, now he is the president of the country, and in their manifesto, it is clearly mentioned that they are going to change the law. He just became the president, so it's a tiny hope for us. So we'll see what we can push, we can tell them that as activists, as feminists, as people who are working in the SRHR section, that you have given us a promise, so let's work on it. So this is a good step for us for now. This is also a kind of interesting one. In 2024, this Dr. Subhashini Fernandez, she was a parliament member as well. She passed a private bill on miscarriage leave. Let's say like if someone had a miscarriage and they can have 7 days, like a 1 week leave from their work, but this doesn't include any kind of unsafe abortion because it's illegal and no one is going to tell that I had illegal unsafe abortion. This is just only for medical the abortion happening medical let's say like a hospital. Okay. So talking about barriers, you can clearly see it's mainly the religious groups and then the limited political willpower in the country. Politicians especially, they are really afraid that they will lose their votes, they can't come back to the parliament, and the misinformation, stigma, and also lack of sustained advocacy in the parliament, which include this issue is not going to the national agenda in the country. This is from actually, yesterday night only I added that after learning the law and the rights from Manisha, but I'm not going to explain. So what we really need, what Sri Lankans is, this is 2022. I'm pretty sure you all know about this incident which happened in Sri Lanka, which President literally ran away from the country. So Sri Lanka has achieved many things from peaceful protest, which mean we can go for social action, we can work on this, we can do campaigns to push this issue to the legislation. And so how Yanis as a part of this discourse. So this was a video campaign done with ASAP, and you can literally go to the ASAP YouTube and watch this video. This is the very first abortion-related documentary in Sri Lanka. And these are also the work done by Yanis in previous years, and this is our founder, one of founders, Saraswasa. Yes, and more video campaigns, the academy, TV programs, and we also have a website for people with disabilities, it's over here, use a disability-friendly website. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Naidara. I take my hat off to you for listening to politicians, because politicians say the most misogynist things, and I don't think I could take it. Yeah, and I think Sri Lanka has relatively good MMRs for their level of development. Yeah, but one thing Nayandara said, that this is what politicians turn around and say, to us, that it's just 30 deaths. So it's what is 30 deaths? But my argument would be 30 deaths from unsafe abortions are 30 deaths too many. Nobody should die from an abortion in 2025. So we can keep pushing, and we take hope in the people power that kicked out your president, prime minister, was it? Yes. And we hope that it's replaced by good things as well. And keep up the good fight. So we would like to invite the next speaker, Aisha.
Yes, so we'd like to invite the next speaker, Aisha Inas, who is a psychology student and a passionate young advocate for youth empowerment and reproductive rights. She is actively involved in IPPF Saran, working to strengthen youth engagement in sexual and reproductive health advocacy.
Hi, I'm so nervous that my stomach is hurting right now, but it's okay. So, as you know already, my name is Aisha Inas, and today I will be speaking. Before I go with the title of the presentation, I would like to mention that due to the sensitivity of this topic, attached to this topic, in context of Maldives, I will be using the term medical termination instead of abortion. So let's begin, shall we? So today we will be talking about the concept of medical termination in Maldives. And I have also included a slide for the definition of terms that some of few of us might not be quite familiar with, because our native language is not English, right? Because even I had to Google some of these words. So fatwa means legal ruling on a point of Islamic law. Gestation is a process or period of developing inside the womb between conception and birth. Judicial is of, by, or appropriate to a court or judge. Kin is one's family and relations. Legislative, having the power to make laws. And mahram is a family member with whom marriage is permanently unlawful. Non-mahram is someone with whom marriage is lawful. So before I go further with the PPT, I would like to delve deeper in. Sorry, before I delve deeper into the presentation, I would like to give some surface level information based on the Maldives. Is it a bit too small to see?
It's a bit dry.
Oh.
Just continue.
That's okay.
So the Maldives is an independent, democratic republic based on the principles of Islam and is a unitary state to be known as the Republic of Maldives. And the Maldives has a population of 525,994, according to the World Bank in 2023, with 1,192 coral islands grouped in a double chain of 26 atolls. Our capital city is Male. Here you can see in the middle. It's located in the Kaf Atoll. And our constitution consists of legislative power, executive power, and judicial power. all legislative power in the Maldives is vested in the People's Parliament called the People's Majlis, and the executive power is vested in the President, and the judicial power is vested in the courts of the Maldives. So, this is for the audience. What do you think are the legal conditions for medical termination in the Maldives? Like, how many conditions do you think there are? Huh? Okay, we'll see about that then. So the circumstances in medical termination. In the Maldives, medical termination has traditionally been permitted only under two conditions. This was before a new fatwa came, and so these two conditions were to save a woman's life or to preserve her physical health. However, a fatwa issued by the Ministry of Islamic Affairs, FIG Academy, in December 2013 expanded these conditions, which was also highly encouraged and advocated by lots of organizations in the Maldives, working and advocating for SRHR. So under this fatwa, a medical termination within 120 days of gestation is permitted in certain cases, such as, the first condition is under the circumstance where a mahram, kin with whom marriage is unlawful, man commits forceful adultery with his kin. So if we were to say it in other words, yes, incestuous rape. So the second one is under the circumstance where a non-mahram, a person with whom marriage is lawful, man commits forceful adultery with a woman. Yeah. And the third one, under the circumstance where a man commits forceful adultery with a physically weak or underage girl. And the fourth one is under the circumstance where in a lawful marriage the conceived fetus is believed to be a thalassaemic major, sickle cell major, or the fetus is believed to be physically or mentally deformed at the time of its birth, and that it will not be cured by any means. Under the circumstance, and the fifth one, the last one, under the circumstance where the life of a pregnant woman is in danger, the termination of the fetus or administration of an induced abortion even after 120 days of gestation. So yet even with these conditions, even with this law, why is it still so difficult to have access to safe and legal abortion in Maldives? So before I would like to start, I would also like to quote Audre Lorde that there is no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives. So, well, actually, that's not a single issue. It's not just one single issue because it all branches out to so many issues. Since, especially for women living in rural areas, women living in dispersed islands, underdeveloped islands, and especially if they're suffering financially. So here are some issues, which is limited medical access, financial issues, medical practitioners recommend tertiary hospitals in our neighboring countries, socio-economic barriers, little to no recent research about medical termination in Maldives, barriers for survivors of sexual violence, cultural stigma and social judgment attached, lack of awareness and information for women living in rural areas. And in most cases, medical termination is supported, But in the fourth circumstance, if you were to medically terminate a fetus, which is a thalassemia major, or a sickle cell major, or a mentally or physically deformed, then the society obviously has something to say to it, like murder. Just use a condom. You should be in jail. Baby killer. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? These hard words of judgment, like even when there's a law, the society, they always have something harsh to say about it. And I would like to talk more about this, but then the time is very limited, so this is the last quote. The future depends entirely on what each of us does every day. A movement is only people moving. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aisat. It's crazy and so beautiful, your PowerPoint actually with the flowers. But it's crazy to see how flowery all the ways of saying basically rape and incest are. Like, I just want that one thing, the whole slide to be replaced with get an abortion when I want it. That's all. So thank you very much. We'll have our next speaker up for Aisha to introduce.
So next we have Olivia Anagono, who is a Tologese master student specializing in public international law. She is currently working as an intern in the program department at Lee Center, ODAS. And she will be speaking about ensuring the right and access to safe abortion services in armed conflict context, a humanitarian emergency in the Great Lakes region, Burundi, Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda.
So, morning everyone, my name is Olivia, I am from Togo, and English is not my first language, so I will try. Before to go straight to the point, I just hope you will be kind, very kind. So, my presentation is about access to safe abortion in armed conflict context, especially in Great Lakes region. For information, Great Lakes region is composed by DRC, Rwanda, Burundi, and Uganda. As you can see, these countries are facing or have faced armed conflict. In DRC, there is ongoing conflict in Rwanda, there was genocide against Tutsi. In Burundi, civil war in 1993, and Uganda civil war between 1916 and 1918. But I will focus on DRC conflict because it is an ongoing conflict. So, few numbers. In 2023, we have 25,166 victims of sexual violence, which is equal to more than 2 per hour. In 2024, we have 16 victims of sexual violence between January and March, and in 2025, between January 27 and February 2, the number of women who experienced sexual violence continued, I think. Okay, few factors. Use of women as war weapons. Despite its prohibited, sexual violence, especially rape, is used as armed conflict weapons. Women and girls are the first victims. Also, we have weakness of social structure. So, we have also difficulty in accessing family planning service. In case of war, it may be difficult for government and organizations to maintain access to family planning. Limiting number of organizations providing safe abortion care. Right to self-abortion and armed conflict. So we have a strong legal framework. In international level, we have Convention of Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. Article 12, which provides non-discrimination in sexual and reproductive rights and access to family planning. In regional, we have Maputo Protocol, especially Article 11 and Article 14. And in DRC, we have Penal Code and Standards and Guidelines for Comprehensive Women-Centered Abortion in DRC. In Penal Code, which is very restrictive and prohibit abortion in Article 166, and Standards and Guidelines for Comprehensive Women-Centered Abortion in DRC allowed abortion. So it is very contradictory. So I will talk about obstacles to access to abortion care. We have legal barriers. As I have said, Penal Code prohibits abortion in DRC in all the cases. Also, we have lack of healthcare infrastructure. In case of war, it's very difficult to have infrastructure which provides safe abortion. And we have also cultural barriers and social stigma. In Africa especially, people think that access to abortion is equal to kill a child. It's important today to educate people and to say that abortion is a right and abortion is a healthcare facilities. So, recommendation, make right to self-abortion a reality, especially in DRC. So, firstly, vulgarization and harmonization. Vulgarization because women in DRC don't know Maputo Protocol, for example, and it will be very complicated to access to safe abortion if, as a woman, I don't know my rights. Harmonization, I have said that penal code and standard is very penal code and standards for access to safe abortion is very contradictory. So it's important for government to harmonize their legal system. Also, investment, collaboration, and local leadership. Investment to local, to health facilities. Investment to health infrastructure is very important in case of conflict. Collaboration and local leadership. We have a lot of organizations who works on abortion in conflict, but these organizations don't collaborate. So it's very important to collaborate to know that, for example, MSI can do abortion and because of financement of PSA, another organization cannot do that. And local leadership. I think that in Africa, especially in DRC, many local organizations don't work in safe abortion, and it's important as human beings, as local organizations to do to allow people to access to local to access to abortion. And values clarification, education, no stigmatization. We have a strong cultural and social culture. who makes that in Africa, most of people think that abortion is not a good way. It's important today to educate people, to clarify, to say that if women access to abortion, it is not to kill people. It is, I can say it is healthcare. And conclusion. Right to safe abortion is one of the most important rights in humanitarian context. As women, girls, LGBTQ+ people, militant for sexual and reproductive rights, as human beings, it's our work to advocacy for implementation of this right. Thank you.
Thank you.